What's up there, workforce? Chris here with WorkToGame, and I just wanted to sit down and do a community feedback on one of our recent podcasts with Mizzteq. I really had a lot of fun talking with her. We recorded one with Heal Me Harry that will be going live on Monday, right before Shadowbringers. So I look forward to that one as well. The post show on that one actually ran a full hour, so I wish we'd recorded that because that was like a second podcast. But to jump into Mizzteq, these are basically just the comments because you guys were overwhelmingly supportive of her. I did note a lot of them were like, hey, I didn't know what she looked like, or I think she's really pretty and things like that. I did want to remind you guys, like, she's a streamer. So like if you want to go interact with her, actually I think on Saturday mornings she does her MTQ University, which is where she kind of teaches viewers the content and things like that. I think she prioritizes subscribers because obviously you'd have to sort the stack somehow of the number of people that would love to be in a group with somebody that just knows the content that well. But let's go ahead and dive in. The first comment is Nelson saying, when I began playing Final Fantasy, I was solely a DPS player in games, but I wanted to reinvent myself in a new MMO, so I decided to take up tanking. Would not have been possible without Mizzteq's guides. Anxiety would have crushed me. Thank you for all your hard work. This is one of the nicest comments you can leave for a creator, is just that what they made actually made a difference. It's not always easy to make every video, and sometimes you kind of get in your own head thinking, oh, is this going to be good? Will people even like this? And so comments like this really go a long way. I mean, you don't have to make it up, but like if there is a video that actually made a difference out of the last, say 100 you watched, then go ahead and leave a positive comment. There's just a lot of negativity on the internet, and it's really nice to see this, and Mizzteq's guides are 100% deserving of this. I can relate that I used to heal in WoW, so when I left WoW, I haven't really capped a healer since. So this will be the first expansion where I get back to heavily healing, because I did pick 2 healers in our draft, and so I will be looking to a lot of guides as I get into healing, and creators who have documented all that for me will be a godsend. Ayun? My dream would be Mizzteq, Larry, Mioni, Zeppla, WorkToGame, and Happy work on a dungeon together. First of all, I think that would have to be a trial. And second of all, I don't think we're all playing on the same data center. Actually, I know we're not. And then third of all, these are all creators we've collaborated with in the past. So if there's stuff that you guys want to see us collaborate with, we definitely appreciate the suggestions. But if you look in our backlog and you want to see us have conversations, Mizzteq has been on the podcast, Larry's been on the podcast, Mioni has been around for, I feel like, lots of things. Maybe that's just us always interacting with his content because we have so much overlap. Zepla's been on the podcast, and then Mr. Happy's been on the podcast. But it was a while back, so the format has kind of shifted, and I hope has been more professional. So we've invited him back, so he should be on the schedule coming up. So hopefully you guys are excited about that. Char says, exit lag works so good. As a summoner, it made get Bahamut feel clean. I live in New York, so my ping went from 96 down to 32. Oh my gosh, you saved me. Guys, sponsorships is something that we haven't spent a lot of time talking about on the channel, but it is something that as we want the channel to grow and we want to do more things, things like, go to BlizzCon and go to FanFest, and hey, did you guys consider going to E3? And, we love how many videos you guys are making. When we talk about wanting to make more videos or spend more time on those videos or have more podcasts and things like that, that all comes from time. Brian and I both have careers that we can scale the amount we work. We both home office. And so when we talk about the amount of time that we designate for this channel, y'all's support makes a huge difference in that. And taking on sponsorships is another way we can supplement that, and not rely so heavily on the generosity that you guys have shared with us. But when picking those, we try to be really careful on only picking products we support, only picking products we stand behind, and even within products I use, not necessarily everything in my life do I feel that I want to recommend to other people, even if I myself use it, because I might be aware of its flaws. And so exit lag is one that, like, Brian really stood behind before we recommended it. And so hopefully that kind of helps you guys understand, if we take on more sponsorships in the future, what that looks like, what that means, how we go through choosing those, because we really are really excited. The level this community is built up to. We just had our first live community event, and that was incredible. Meeting some of you guys in real life, that was just awesome. And we were really lucky that some of you were close enough to be able to make that trip. So it's not something that we want to just throw out for a few bucks off to the side. So hopefully that kind of helps address that. I know this probably isn't the place, but this is where the comment appeared. Blackwing. It's a surprise to hear you guys skip cutscenes when you're so invested in the story. I was under the impression you read even the small little tidbits along the way. As for me, I always read everything, absolutely everything. It takes me a while to max level to the expansion, but the story is so much fun. It's also the reason why I loved Stormblood so much. The struggle of the liberation of Doma especially was so personal that you just had to win. I'm so excited that Shadowbringers, I asked for 3 days off work starting on the 28th and will continue until the 4th. So first of all, just to be clear, Mizzteq was saying that she skips cutscenes. I know that I skip cutscenes. Brian does not. So when talking about 3 people on a podcast, just want to remove Brian from that because I know there's a lot of opinions about skipping cutscenes. I know that for me personally, I skipped it because I have a history of skipping them in games like World of Warcraft. They're just not games that I thought of as being story-driven games, even though they've tried to really move in that direction. So I'm kind of in that habit from a decade or more of WoW playing. And then when you come over to Final Fantasy, I came in late, right? So I came in 2.0 to play with 1.0 players. And so like I felt like, oh my gosh, I gotta get through this. I gotta get through this. My load screens were already so long on PS3. It was like, okay, how do I make up the time? And it's like, well, you skip it. You skip it. So I think I did watch the first openings cutscene. I was like, that's awesome. And then I watched that very first cutscene after that, and I started in Thanalan. And so I run outside Ul'dah, I'm watching those cutscenes, and then I'm like, oh, this is going to take forever. And so I just start skipping them and skipping them and skipping them. And once you get in the habit of skipping them once, it's not a story that's really easy to jump in later. It's like coming in on the last season of Lost. Like you're just behind, or the very end of Game of Thrones. Like somebody can try to catch you up, but it's not the same. So I'm really looking forward to Shadowbringers. It sounds like it'll be enough of a fresh start with the sharding, with the aspect of kind of going somewhere different, that to anybody still working through the storyline that may have skipped, it seems like it might be a good clean break point to pick it up. I tried that with Stormblood, and I was really good about watching story, and then I started to see things I didn't understand again, and I went back to skipping some. So I don't know. I don't think it makes the game less enjoyable. I think that the game can be enjoyed however you enjoy it, and I think we all put probably a preposterous number of hours in this compared to somebody maybe that doesn't play MMOs and looks at us like, you do what? But as long as we're all enjoying it, and as long as we're all enjoying time with each other, I don't... Doesn't bother me if you craft or don't craft. Doesn't bother me if you skip cutscenes or don't. Doesn't bother me if you like PvP or don't. It's just awesome that we agreed on a game together, and that the community can be so big, and that with each person in the community I probably have some overlap, even if it's not 100%. Mandy, nice show. MTQ is always a wealth of knowledge about things and has some great insight. I had the pleasure of meeting her in line at the Yojimbo for Yojimbo at FanFest. One of the guys in line was making some pretty good puns, and she gave us a bunch of pun stickers. Such a nice person too, very friendly and always smiling. Her and Zeppel have some of the best puns of the creators on 14. I don't hear too many puns coming out of anything else. I mean, Larry has a fair bit of good jokes, but pun-wise, I think they're definitely leading the way. And her knowledge is pretty much second to none when it comes to Savage fights, from the standpoint of like the ability to pass it on. I think there's a lot of top-end players out there, and some of them are content creators. And those top-end players may know their class, or they may know their role. But what makes MTQ unique is just her ability to present the content in a way that I feel like I can digest it, even if she doesn't play my class or role. Because there are classes and roles that she doesn't really spend a lot of time in. I mean, she spends most of her time tanking. Tanking as Paladin specifically. So, I don't know. I agree with this, and I think it's awesome you got to meet her at FanFest. I don't think I met her at FanFest. I think I just saw her and was like, oh my gosh, that's Mizzteq. And so I don't know that we may have shaken hands, and that's about it. It was much nice, I felt like I could approach her more at the media tour in like a smaller environment where there were like 16 of us. So awesome that you got to visit with her in line. Michael, I know a lot of you guys took note of Brian. I will forever call them Chibobos now. So I'm glad you guys liked that. maybe we'll have to look at putting that on a t-shirt. We'll come out with a Chibobo companion t-shirt. So I'm glad you guys liked that. Multi Jelly Bones. The memory of Mr. Happy and the whole community finding out that they had been doing Ultimate Weapon all wrong, and that they need to fail certain mechanics is certainly a very precious one. It still brings a little bit of goosebumps all the way back down my spine. Like, that is one very, very intelligent concept. There was a panel at FanFest where they talked about the Ultimate design and how much fun the devs had actually sitting and watching streams and watching them learn and being like, oh my gosh, they're so confident on this, and they say they don't know this, but actually this is where they've been doing things right, and this is where they could not be more wrong. And there is something special about content when it's new. Games like Final Fantasy and WoW that have been going for so long and continually add content along the way can have such breadth that they are very welcoming to new players. They will pretty much always, as long as they're live, be worth being a new player, because even if the current stuff is junk, you would still have everything previous to get through. So you would just play through previous and then unsubscribe when you get to current, if it's really that bad. But when current is good, when current is on point, like it looks like Shadowbringers is going to be, there is just something special about all of us being in dungeons blind. And so on the day that, the trial drops, it can bring out a lot of toxicity in chat because there are a lot of people who don't appreciate dying. But I enjoy learning mechanics. Even once I've gotten the clear and I'm wanting to run it again for some reason, either just for a guide or because I'm with somebody that wants to run it again or whatever, or that kind of week 2 clear, there's still plenty of people that don't know the fight. And I don't know, there's just something special about that. There's something special about the amount of chat activity. There's something special about... it just feels like you should be able to tolerate more. Like, it's like, this is so new. This was built just for us. This boss has only been killed so many times worldwide. The loot that is going to drop, I don't have the loot table memorized. I don't know what's going to drop. Maybe it'll be something that I can use. When you talk about there being new mounts, when you talk about getting a mount when content is new is just something special. I am really excited when an expansion comes out that looks like it's coming off of a game being healthy and looks like the expansion is going to be healthy. This is a really special time. We're not guaranteed that 6.0 will be this exciting. It might be, and I hope it is, but we're here, and this one does look this exciting. And that's something to be cherished, because not every MMO can be hitting on all cylinders every time. And it's pretty cool to be playing what will likely be considered the best MMO of 2019 looking back, as we go into the expansion that will help define that. So hopefully you guys enjoy Shadowbringers as much as I do. I really am excited. I know that Brian and I sometimes get noticed because we critique the game and things like that, and that's because we don't think the game's perfect. But it doesn't mean that we'd rather be somewhere else. It doesn't mean that we'd rather play something else. This is the game that most defines my video games right now. And if another game takes it, I hope it's not because this game got worse. I hope it's because something else just rose to the occasion and is that much better. Pretty cool. Skeeth, not going to lie, I quit playing 14 because of time constraints, but I still watch your guides for puns. What an immense compliment to a creator that you still watch their videos that are all about one game, even when they don't, even when you don't play that game. I still watch Method for world first clears, even when I haven't been subscribed to WoW. I still watch Day 9 for a long time after I quit StarCraft 2, and I think that, and I think he now covers a lot of Hearthstone and stuff. I've shifted my content consumption, so not really a fault of Day 9. So if you haven't discovered Day 9, go seek out whatever he's doing. I'm sure it's awesome. I think that's awesome to find a creator that you just connect with the personality there. Streamers that I watch play games that I don't play. There's only a handful that can make that jump, and it's awesome that Mizzteq is that for you. Charda, the people running BA are convinced that it'll be completely dead come Shadowbringers. I mean, this is definitely the debate, right? Historically, the Relic dies moving into the next expansion. The Ultimates die. They're still possible, but they really lose a lot of interest. The dungeons they start to be considered old news, and people go, oh, I had to run this. And so just historically in general, the entire content cycle shifts to the new stuff. In my opinion, a MMO is most defined by its current level cap content. That is its best foot forward. That is talking about somebody in their current stage of life. I'm not talking about you when you were in school. I'm not talking about you when you were a kid. I'm not just whoever you are right now is the person that most defines who you are. And so that's what I think about MMOs. And I think that means BA will likely die. The difference here is the reason this is even a discussion, the reason people even go out to this Discord and things like that to say, like, will it die? Will it die? Is that BA was so different. BA required that you put this immense amount of time into this, what kind of became a community building piece of content. And you clear something that the game forces you to go outside of it to communicate. And so there are these relationships formed that now don't have anywhere in game. They were never built to be in game, and now they exist, and people don't want to lose them. And so there is an argument for saying that could keep BA alive. And the question is, will that be strong enough? On one hand, nothing has ever, in my opinion, made the jump to a new expansion without getting new expansion content. So like, yes, Fates will be a big deal in Shadowbringers, but not old Fates, 5.0 Fates. So, you know, I do see there are things that make the jump. PvP is a good example. We've scaled PvP up to the new, you know, the people hit the new level cap. Well, PvP is level 30 and above, so PvP makes the jump. But that's because it was designed to make the jump, and BA wasn't. The relic grind isn't. It's just the relic for that one expansion. And so can BA kind of do something that no other piece of content has done? Well, in one way it already has, so it's possible that it continues to break the mold, but I don't think it's any fault of BA if it doesn't survive on, which is the direction I think it'll go. But like, honestly, I'd be happy to be wrong in this case, because I just think that would be really cool to think about some piece of content just living out there just for the sake of it. Fox, you guys don't seem to understand the healers are right and have always been right about everything, even before launches. We don't have to wait to know. Just because you have your own doesn't mean the rest of us have valid criticism before it goes live. I don't know anybody who's always been right about everything, us or otherwise. But I do understand that there are views outside of ours. I think, that's why we title our opinion pieces Let's Discuss. It's why we try to make community feedbacks. When a topic gets a big amount of comments and starts to have a life of its own, where the comment section seems to be this own topic that's different than the original piece. That's why we try to make those at least once a week. They usually come out on Fridays, just as a typical rule of thumb, but not always, just like the podcast typically comes out on Mondays, but not always as a rule of thumb. So I think it's awesome that you have your own opinion. I don't know that anybody can be right about everything before it launches, so it's okay if it turns out that we were wrong and you were wrong, but you're definitely welcome to have your own opinion, and we encourage you to post it in the comments below. We encourage you to have that conversation. Yeah, awesome. Especially because Brian and I don't, he heals quite a bit more than I do, being Summoner Scholar, but we're not the main healers that somebody like a Heal Me Harry is, where they heal Savage content, they heal, all of that stuff. So when it comes to healers, like, we're speaking a lot from experience. We're speaking a lot from I've done a lot of healing over the course of MMOs, but my 14, healer is somebody in my party. It's not typically me. And so since I don't play every role all the time and I don't clear all the content every time, my opinion is just my opinion, not a dev. So hopefully that kind of clears that up. But I will say, like, when you're making criticisms, I had to take a class in school talking about scope and not increasing your scope needlessly. Setting things in absolutes is just it's just something that, if you're going to come out and say opinions just as a point of criticism, I would say be careful with absolutes. Because the problem with an absolute is if you say that and then any part of your statement is wrong, then it makes the whole statement wrong. So if I say that I I never eat Pop-Tarts. Now I only have to eat one Pop-Tart for that to be false, as opposed to me saying, I don't really eat a lot of Pop-Tarts. That's a more accurate statement, and that gives me room for a little bit of fluff. And the example in school, I went to school for architecture, for those of you that don't know, is don't say something like, my buildings don't leak ever. Because then if one building leaks, you're suddenly at fault. Instead of saying, I've designed my buildings not to leak, and things like that, where you open it up to be like, okay, when there's contractor error, when there's extreme weather, when there's material failure, all of a sudden there's all these things that shouldn't traditionally be my fault, that I'm not claiming. And so then all I have to defend in that statement is why I'm not the reason it leaked when that eventually goes to court. And so especially in text form, I don't know why this comment caught me like that. I think because lately we've been criticized for something we said in text, and so I'm just kind of on that I'm kind of on edge there. Thank you, Fox. You're definitely welcome to the community, 100%. Please feel free to always share your opinion, especially if ours is wrong or if we've missed something. Brian and I are not perfect. We do not play this game 100 hours a week, and we do not play all aspects of this game. So even if we were perfect, we would probably still miss things. And so 100% thank you for commenting, and thank you for sharing any opinion that differs with ours. We love the conversation as long as it stays respectful. Those are the only comments that really get caught by a filter or whatever, and we don't release them. So when the filter grabs something because you've put language and stuff in there and you've been like, oh, you're a blank, 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 yeah, that gets grabbed, and we just leave that grabbed. As long as everybody's respectful and reasonable, the conversation is 100% the reason Brian and I started WorkToGame. Caraback story skippers are the worst. Story skippers. I don't know if you're being serious, but I do think the game has room for all kinds. I'm not an RPer, but I'm glad they exist. I don't do a lot of PvP in this game compared to other games where I feel that PvP has connected more with the way I like to play. But I'm glad it exists. So, I think I can skip the story and enjoy the game just as much as you do. What I do try to do is make sure that anytime I'm talking about story or I'm talking about content on this channel, I try to remind people that I'm not the person that's the expert on story of even the two of us, me and Brian. And we are definitely not like an FS Asher or anything like that. Yeah, he actually said, Ethis actually said he's going to be streaming the launch. So if you guys want to watch him, but he said he's going to be taking his time and really diving into the lore. So I assume he'll level a lot slower than the rest of us. But that would be an interesting stream to watch if I wasn't already set to be playing. So if you're maybe stuck at work or something like that where you can't play and you're wondering who to watch and you do love story and you don't mind it being spoiled, because that is the most spoily of spoil streams, definitely feel free to go watch Ethis and experience it with somebody who just knows and dives so deep into the story. B, I wonder what's up with the random censored words. So we don't address this all the time. I mean, we make a lot of videos on this channel, so I'm sure it gets mentioned maybe every 100 videos or whatever. But Brian and I actually run this channel to be, you can call it child friendly, you can call it business professional, you can call it work appropriate, whatever the term is. But even though I may use foul language in my own life, I may tell inappropriate jokes or listen to inappropriate jokes in my own life. I love watching a lot of live comedy, and so there's a lot of foul language and offensive topics that come up when watching lots of live comedy. That's not what WorkToGame is. WorkToGame is something that if somebody wants to listen to it at work or in their car as like the podcast form or something like that, or they want to have it playing over their computer speakers, which may be in a common space in their house, so there could be kids around or something like that, or even you yourself don't prefer to hear those kind of words, I don't feel that they add anything to the type of content we put out. So, if we were a stand-up comedy channel, I think that comedy, in my personal opinion, is sometimes enhanced by a well-placed word. I don't necessarily like the foulest of comics, just as my personal taste. But I've gone and seen even like Jim Gaffigan live, and there's the occasional word drop that I think is just so well placed that it is what makes the joke just really pop. And so like I appreciate that, but I understand that not everybody does. And so we try to keep the channel something that can be enjoyed by everybody. And when you put those words in, it doesn't make the people who like foul language go, oh my gosh, I didn't like this guide before, but I love it now. but it does make the people who didn't want that or were in a position where that wouldn't be an appropriate guide to play, it does make that no longer consumable. And so since we want guides to be able to reach anybody who's struggling with the content or just wants to be better at gaming or whatever, or has a friend that's joining or anything like that, we want to make this content something that can live like that. We choose to keep cuss words at an absolute minimum on live content, and we try to make sure that none of them are in our YouTube content. So if one ever slips through, I do apologize, but that's our goal here at WorkToGame, and it has nothing to do with whether or not Brian and I cuss in real life or any of our guests cuss, but it's just something that, just like I don't cuss, I don't really cuss that much in front of my parents. I don't think I'd cuss in a church or at work, or I don't think I cuss anytime I've been like in a classroom setting or anything like that, or with a client at work. I try to keep that to a minimum. It's the exact same, right? I would conduct myself with the same professionalism, the same exact reason that you may put on a collared t-shirt to, like a polo or a dress shirt to go to a certain event. There's just sometimes that being respectful of the event requires that you act just a little bit differently than yourself out of respect for that thing. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. And even those of you that wouldn't mind if Brian and I cussed a little, just know that we do it out of respect for you, because we don't know that. And there's quite a few of you. And so we want to make sure that we do something that we think can be respectful of each and every one of you. So thank you guys for subscribing to the channel, and hopefully that makes sense. Brad says, excited for Shadowbringers. Just broke down my computer and cleaned it thoroughly. Changed color of cooling fluid, set it to purple, set LEDs to blue. Got my mini fridge stocked with monsters and the top drawer full of snacks. I am set for release. Your videos are a godsend. Thank you guys for all you do. So, a little bit longer comment there, but good prep. It cannot be underestimated. If there's anything you need to get done around the house, anything you need to get done with work, anything you need to get done, get your desk clean, or have, snacks and water and whatever, when you plan on playing a lot next weekend, just be sure that you've taken care of everything you can to be ready for that. Let's play a lot of Shadowbringers, guys. Murgler. Do you guys have any input or thoughts on why World First seem to be more of a big deal on WoW versus 14? The fights are just as interesting, if not more so, yet I never hear about any of the team's players going in these clearing these pieces of Savage content. It's always just had me wondering things like this. First of all, the content is designed inherently differently when it comes to that mentality. Yoshi is all about him and his dev team believe in us taking breaks and all of that. And so when you talk about World First, it's something that even WoW devs have struggled with. Does this make the game naturally prone to being unhealthy? It's something when it comes to World First leveling and stuff. They also found it frustrating. They spend months and months designing these zones and people try to blast through it in 4 hours. And so I think that there's an inherent mentality shift there in the 14 dev team and the WoW dev team in what was created. Second of all, when it comes to difficulties, Ultimate fights do have a lot of people watching. So just because the World First is not documented because the devs are afraid of what that would do to the tone of things doesn't mean that World First doesn't matter when it comes to Ultimate. Savage is not necessarily Mythic equivalent. It's probably somewhere between Heroic and Mythic. There are people who get day one Savage clears. And so, I think that there's not that same progression. And so the race is a little less clear. When you have people getting day one clears sometimes, it's harder to track that. It's harder to kind of keep that in mind as opposed to something like a WoW race where that top 100 list of guilds can be weeks and weeks ahead of other people sometimes. So yeah, I wouldn't mind us seeing a team or something pop up and be the method of that. I don't know that the content calls for it at this time. The fact that we only get 2, possibly 3 ultimates per expansion does limit that, as opposed to WoW, where there's kind of a progression race every single tier. But it's an interesting topic. It's an interesting thing, and I do think it's intentional on both dev teams how much that becomes a thing in WoW and how much that becomes a thing in 14. I think both of them have seen that start to form in the community, and they've either leaned into it or they've leaned away from it. But yeah, I don't know. Interesting topic. I wouldn't know for sure, but that's that's kind of my thoughts and my input on why. But I don't know that it's black and white. The communities sometimes have just formed differently around things. And it's interesting when you see dev questions in interviews about, was this intentional or was this not? Because in hindsight, it's really easy to say like, oh, well, this content worked because of X. And it's like, well, I don't know if that was intended. There are times like the train in Eureka where that was not intended. And there are times where the communication in BA was intended. And that's two different things in the same piece of content in recent history. So something like World First is definitely something that has formed over time. The amount of people chasing that and wanting that in WoW, and the way when you go back and you say, yeah, in Classic, I used to play as Guild X or whatever, and you expect people to recognize that guild name, that comes a lot from the respect for World First. And that comes from that. And 14, I think, lacks that, but I think that might be intentional. Josh says, better get some males on your podcast before y'all's wives catch on. I thought this was so funny. I actually read this to my wife. I said, yeah, we actually, when doing the scheduling, it worked out where we had 3 female guests in a row. And my wife's response was, about time. She's like, the gaming world is not just guys. And so like, we don't pick our guests based on any of that. We literally line them up based on topics. So like when we talk about upcoming Shadowbringers, we said, well, we want to talk to somebody who knows a lot more about Savage than us. And so the obvious 2 names that come to mind are Happy and Mizzteq. And we've never gotten to talk to Mizzteq before. And I think she makes probably the best guides in the space. And so we asked Mizzteq, would you rather talk to us before launch or after launch? Would you rather talk to us once you've gone hands-on with the content or before? And she said before. And so we did that. And so that schedule was kind of centered around her. We pick our guests based on who we want to talk to. When I picked Scott and Xandria, it was for the same reason. There were 2 people that I saw making the jump from WoW that I think were both putting out very cool content. And I thought were on opposite ends of the spectrum, one doing min-eye level and one really slowing down and just chatting about the story and having a much more casual experience. And so I was like, wow, we should book those back-to-back weeks and have contrasting discussions on what it's like coming from WoW. I thought that I was watching Zeppla a lot, and she started going off on, she was making content both on Twitch and on YouTube talking about, there was just this theme of like why we shouldn't care about leaks, or like why we should ignore leaks, and why communities form certain ways, and why, and they were just topics that I felt she was addressing on stream. And I was like, man, I wanted to, but then she would move on to the next topic. And I was like, no, I want to know so much more. And so we invited her on to talk about that. So, my wife was personally really excited. I don't know about Brian's that there happened to be women on, but, we don't have like a quota or anything. There's just people that we want to talk to and we invite. And when they say yes, we work with them on the date. And so the order that our guests show up in is mostly driven by them. I will say the one exception is we told Harry when we wanted him on, and he said yes, because Heal Me Harry coming up, we picked because I just wanted somebody to be excited about Shadowbringers. And when I think about like who in the community just gushes excitement sometimes and can just be so positive and fun to talk to, that's the person I wanted to talk to the week of launch. And so that's why we picked Heal Me Harry for the podcast that goes live week of launch. And then we actually, the only other podcast that was driven largely by schedule was, I guess Happy's will be. His is centered on being the week before Savage. But we have a non-14 creator booked for recording the week of the expansion, because we knew we couldn't do a 14 creator because we record during the week, Monday through Saturday, whatever day works best for the guest, and then it goes live that following Monday, which means that we will be recording with them before the expansion drops, because we're not going to record anything with anybody on Friday or Saturday, and then it's going to go live after. And so there's nothing we could talk about with a 14 creator where it's like, oh, what do you think about this? And then by the time it goes live, it's already happened. So we knew that wasn't going to be a good idea. So hopefully that kind of just gives some kind of explanation on how we pick the guests we do, especially as we've upped our podcast rate to a minimum of 1 a week, has been the recent trend, and we hope to hold that. I'm really excited by some of the guests that have said yes, and Mizzteq was really, really cool. I still felt weird when we went to the media tour that there were so many people in there that I've watched so much of their content, and I've watched them stream so much, and it still feels weird to be considered the size we are within the 14 community, and that's largely thanks to you guys. So thank you guys so much. I don't know that all of these guests would have said yes if it weren't for you guys. I know that our size probably does play a factor when we invite people on, and the engagement that the podcast gets probably does play a factor. And that's all you. You guys are awesome. So if you guys want to see us get more guests, anything like that, feel free to always comment them down below. We definitely take note of those. We read probably every comment that gets posted to the channel or close to it. Sometimes it gets a little away from us, just when there's just too many coming in, but we do try our best. We don't necessarily always reply to them all anymore. Yeah, I don't know. Thank you guys. So you guys are awesome. I know this was a longer community feedback than usual, but I'm gonna go ahead and get on with prepping for Shadowbringers. Hopefully you guys do the same. This is Chris with WorkToGame, and I'll see you guys next time.
Hey, it's me. Thanks so much for watching this video. You should click over here to see more videos just like it, or you should click down here to check out our recent vlog. But you can also click somewhere down here below to hit the subscribe button, as well as check out our other info. Again, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.